What's up, everyone? So I have a coaching video for you today, and it's on the topic of values. I made a post, I think yesterday actually, I made a post about how trying to set goals and follow through on the goals without knowing what your core values are would be the same as planting a plant and expecting it to grow and thrive without knowing the kind of plant it is. Because if you don't know the kind of plant, you don't know how to take care of it so that it can grow and thrive. And it's very similar with knowing our core values. And here is why. So if you don't know your core values, then you're going to have a very hard time establishing why it is that you're going after a goal. And anytime a client wants to start working on a goal with me, I make them create a reason why, a strong reason why. And the reason why they need to create the strong reason why is because there are going to be a whole lot of why nots that come up. The brain doesn't like change. It's very uncomfortable for it, so it's going to resist it. And it's going to do so through coming up with lots of excuses that it has evidence for, that it's found in the past. It's going to make tons of sense, and it's going to be so easy to listen to those excuses because you've collected evidence for this your whole entire life because you've been looking for it. You've been looking for evidence to establish your current beliefs. And so when you want to create change and create a new goal, a new habit, you have to change those beliefs. So there's going to be a point in time that you have to go through where the brain's going to have to go through this discomfort of letting go of old beliefs and accepting and being curious about new truths. And that's a scary place for the brain. It does not like that. So it will resist it at all costs, which is why it's important to establish a reason why you are going after a goal, so that when these excuses and the internal dialogue comes in, it doesn't even matter because you've already established a reason why you're doing it, and you can sort of tell your brain, yeah, I understand you. I know you're afraid. I understand where all of these beliefs are coming from. We have so much evidence to support it. I get that. But right now, I want to look for evidence for this. So here's why, not just having a reason why, but having your core values established ahead of time is also important. You can't determine your reason why you're going after a goal if you don't understand your core values. What do I mean by core values? What are values? So a lot of people get really confused about this. When I ask them, what are your main values? What values do you live by? A lot of people don't know. They just don't know. And here's the reason why. First of all, we're taught to ignore our thinking. That's what our society tells us, Everything that we feel is caused by something outside of us. Thinking doesn't really matter, and emotions don't really matter. Just ignore them, feel happy, feel good all the time, and that makes you a good person, right? As long as you're not feeling negative emotions and not getting angry, sad, whatever, you're a good person. So we're automatically taught to ignore our thoughts and to ignore our emotions. And that's where our values lie. And the reason why establishing values is so important is because it's from those values that we get the drive to do something in the first place. So let me start by just telling you guys, I have 4 core values. That's not to say I have a ton of other values that I live by, but I have 4 that no matter what, when I start something, it has to come from these 4 values. And then some other values can come in, and sometimes values conflict with each other. So it's very important to understand them so that you know when values are conflicting with each other, which ones they are, and how to make them work together versus against each other in certain situations. So my core values, I have love, safety, abundance, and then the 4th one is compassion. So those are the 4 values that I move from. No matter what I do in life, if it's not coming from the space of those core values, I'm not doing it. So if I can't align it with those core values, then I'm not doing it. Because then it's me doing something out of alignment with who I am. And so when I'm doing something out of alignment with who I am, I'm resisting myself and what is. And this is what causes so much suffering in people, is that if you try and go after a goal or try and accomplish something and it's outside of your core values, you're literally working against yourself. You don't want to work against yourself. So establishing your core values, number 1, you can understand why it is that you have the current beliefs that you have because you understand your core values. And then you can understand how to make those core values work to creating the new belief So you can almost kind of ease the brain into establishing these new beliefs, because you're like, hey, yeah, we're still working from those values. We've been using these values to prove this, but now we know, like, we can also prove this with these values. So let's look for evidence of this and then move from there. So we understand now the importance of having those values and why we need to have them when creating a goal. Because if we cannot align the goal with the values, you will be constantly working against yourself, and you will create so much suffering, so much resistance, and you will give up. You will. It's just a matter of time. If you're not aligning them with your values, then the goal will look, eventually at one point in time, you're just gonna be like, why am I even doing this? Give up. So how do you establish your core goals? Your core values. I established mine a while ago. But I went through this exercise recently, and I thought it was a really cool exercise, and it just reaffirmed my values. Like when I went back through the exercise, I ended up with the same core values that I already knew that I had. But I want to talk you through this exercise so you can try it out. If you've been struggling with trying to figure out what your core values are, this exercise does wonders. So start off with a piece of paper. Draw a timeline across the piece of paper. Start at the age of 5 and go through the age of 25. By the age of 25, our values are usually pretty solidified. They can flex a little bit, shift more towards one thing or the other, but they're not going to completely change unless you just go through a really, really traumatizing event after the age of 25. Usually by then, our values are set. We know what they are and what we're living from, what space we're moving from, and why we're doing things. And so draw the timeline. Go through ages 5 to 25, and I want you to find all of the peaks and lows in your life from 5 to 25. And I want you to write them out, write out what the events are, and you'll probably have, a few. I had like 6 or 7 of them, huge, like we're talking really high highs, really low lows. I had about 6 of them. And then you write them all down, and then I want you to go back and write out the story in detail of what happened with that event. And here's why. Our values usually come from those events. They come from high highs and they come from low lows. Here's why. When we're experiencing a high high, when we're going through something in life and we feel like we're on top of it, we've accomplished something, done something so great, we've got our back and we're just loving ourselves in life, we're experiencing something. And we want more of that in the world. We want to create more of that in the world. That's a value. That is a value. You want to create more of that in the world. I want to create more love in the world. I want to create more compassion in the world. I want to create more safety in the world. I want to create more abundance in the world. That's kind of funny because actually I don't have to create more abundance. I want people to be aware of the abundance in this world, that it is there and you just have to see it. You don't have to actually create it. It's more creating the ability to see the abundance. Anyways, and from the low lows, the reason why we need those is because also, not only do we want to create more of what we experience at the peaks of our life, but when we go through these low lows and we're feeling that pain, we don't want to experience more of that. We don't want to. And we don't want others to have to go through that. So we want to create more of the opposite in the world. So I went through periods of time where I felt completely alienated, like I felt totally alone. And under my core value of love is connectedness, because with love comes connectedness. And so I wanted to create more connectedness in the world so nobody else had to experience that feeling of feeling totally alone and alienated, like nobody cared about them. I wanted less of that in the world for myself and for other people. So really go through these events, 5 to 25, write out in detail the story, the feelings you were feeling, what exactly happened, who was involved, and what lessons came out of them. What did you get out of this experience? What out of that experience do you want to create more of? And what out of that experience do you want to create more of the opposite of? That's where your values lie. Write them all out. I had a list of like 20 values. And so then what I did is I went back through these 20 values and I started realizing that, you look for commonalities in these values. So under my value of love, there is connectedness. There is also compassion. Compassion falls under love, even though it's also one of my core values. There's compassion. There is acceptance. There is, I actually can't remember. So there were like a list of other values that all fell under love. And so I put them all in one group together. And I was like, so what do these all fall under? What category? And I was like, love. These are all about love. So love is one of my core values. Then I go back through and I realized like there were times in my life where I felt like nobody was there for me. Everybody was out for themselves. Everyone was going to eventually let me down. No, I can't depend on anyone. And so I understood the values of loyalty, the values of reliability, dependability. And then that's where I realized these all fall under safety. People want to feel like they can feel safe. And so that's why this is one of my core values. So go through your list of values and find where values have commonalities and put them together into groups and find like a value that they all fall under. And those will be your core values. And every time you go to start a new goal in your life, if it's about your health, if it's about your business, if it's about your career in general, if it's about your education, if it's about your family, move from those core values. Here's another cool thing you can do. You can actually have family core values where everyone kind of comes together with their core values. They talk about what they want to create more of in the family, what they want to create less of, and the family can actually create a set of core values, and the family moves from that core set of values in everything that they do, all of the decisions that they make. So this is why it is so important to have these established. Without establishing the core values, if you're just creating goals, you have no idea why it is that you want to go after those goals, so you will just give up so easy. Not to mention, here's the other thing. Going through this activity to establish your core values is so important because there are so many of us that have adopted values that we think we should have. Like, oh, my mom told me this, or oh, my grandma told me this, or oh, my pastor told me this, or I see my teachers doing this, so this seems like a good value to have, so maybe that's what I want. And so then we start like trying to create movement from those values, but they're not our genuine values. So this is why it is so important to establish your core values, not what you think somebody else wants your values to be. Because there will be other people that have values that bump up against yours. That is okay. That doesn't make your values bad or theirs bad or yours better or theirs better. It's just different values coming from different situations. But here's the thing also, you can make values work together. So one thing that I find a lot of people tend to have is a really strong value of freedom and a really strong value of reliability and security. And these values seem to bump up against each other. But once you understand that you have both of these values and that that's why you're getting resistance and trying to make movement on a goal, you can actually make these values work with each other. And I talked about this in my last video where I was talking about the fact that creating schedules and eating in a way that serves your body, while a lot of us look at it from a point of restriction. So therefore we feel like we're working against the freedom that we want. That's why we give up on it. But then when we realize that actually eating in a way that serves our body gives us freedom, because we're healthier, we're spending less time craving food and thinking about food and being in the kitchen eating food and feeling like crap because we ate too much food and beating ourselves up because we ate crappy food and food. So when we can actually put food in the situation where it belongs as nourishment for our bodies, and we're using it to take care of our bodies so our bodies feel good, we create more freedom in our life. So instead of it being like, oh, well, I want security, but I also want freedom, so I can't seem to figure out how to make food work in my life, because if I'm trying to have structure with the food, then I go against my freedom. Well, no. By creating the structure with your food, you create a healthier relationship with yourself and your body, and therefore you have more freedom. It's all a matter of learning how to look at it and making the goal work with your core values. This is why establishing those core values ahead of time is so important. Without it, it's like trying to grow a plant without knowing what it is. I swear to you, the most important first step in establishing a goal is knowing the value that it's going to grow from. So that's all I have for you guys today. There's a ton more work to do around this topic, but I wanted to open that up for you guys and help you understand why it's so important to establish these values. And I know you probably hear it all the time from people. If you don't and you're just hearing it now, you're welcome for hearing it, because this is so important for you to know. But if you're tired of hearing it and you're like, I don't understand why these people keep talking about these values, now you know. It's so important, so important. Without it, you might as well not even set goals. I'm serious. Like, really, you're doing yourself such an injustice, such a disservice to try and start going towards a goal without knowing the values that it's coming from. So that's what I have for you. I hope you have some questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, likes, loves for this video, leave them below. Hate the video, laugh at it, that's also okay. And share it, get the message out there. It is so important that we start establishing our values and knowing the space that we're moving from, guys, and to establish our own core values, not someone else's that were thrown on us. Establish your values, know what they are. And guys, it creates so much more momentum, freedom, and love in your life to know what your values are and where you're moving from. So that's, again, all I have. And leave your thoughts, comments below, share the video, and I'll talk to you all soon. Ciao.